And with that, the 2025 year is coming to a close, and I wanted to go ahead and look back at this year as a lot of things. And I will say my biggest thing I want to take away from 2025 is, I guess, the fact that I've gone to go see a lot of movies this year. The thing that really does occur to me is each year I do think I see a lot more movies than the year prior. And I think 2025 really showed that because on my letterbox I have already put out my last few movies. I've seen a couple more after my last review. After Avatar Fire and Ash, checked out a couple more movies. And with that, after Marty Supreme, that pretty much sums up the 2025, the year 2025 with its films. So what I wanted to do was kind of look back at which movies I really thought were a uh, great surprise to me, which ones I really did enjoy a lot, and other ones that I really thought were pretty big stinkers from ones that I thought were just very, very bad. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started. These are really ranked in no particular order. I did rank early on, but over time I got kind of lazy and didn't rank the rest of the movies. So this is pretty much in no order. What I will say though is these movies, pretty much in these first amount of rows, I did really enjoy. So these ones you can pretty much assume that I did really like. Superman, I'll get right off the bat. This is my favorite movie of the year. I'm gonna be making another video at some point talking about the amount of times I saw it. But for now, Superman is my favorite movie of the year. I think what James Gunn was able to do in terms of building out the story and the new DC universe really was off to a great start. I loved what he did with David Cornsweet. He was able to capture the character so well of Superman and Clark Kent, and instead of focusing on the god side of him that other iterations have done the last decade or so, we finally get to see the human side of Superman that I think we've really been missing out on. And I think James Gunn does that so well in its action, its story, its music, its emotions. So for me, I really enjoyed Superman, and that's the reason why I do think it's my favorite movie of the year. Another one that I did really enjoy that's really fighting it is Sinners. Ryan Coogler's movies have been very, very good. I've enjoyed a lot of them, but Sinners I think might be his favorite movie that he's made. That I've really enjoyed. Saw it in IMAX. Have no regrets about seeing it. It was probably the best experience in IMAX this year. Another experience though that was really good though was F1. F1 was a hell of a ride. I think Brad Pitt delivers a really good performance. I love Joseph Kosinski's movies. Top Gun Maverick's one of my favorite movies this last decade, and I would say probably one of my favorite movies in general. I love Top Gun Maverick, but F1 continues that formula, but also does it with cars, so it does do a great job of building tension. Love that movie. My favorite Marvel movie, Fantastic Four: First Steps. Thought it was very, very good. It just felt refreshing to me that I was able to watch a Marvel movie that and Thunderbolts. It felt good to watch a Marvel movie that felt like it actually cared about its characters, delivered its emotions very well. But yeah, there's that. So I loved both Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts. Springer back, another one that I loved. Probably my favorite horror movie this year. It just has all these like tension building moments where you're on the edge of your seat, where you're just like cringing to the scenes of people chewing on glass or just all the stuff smearing on the windows. It was just stuff that I really did enjoy. Another one I did really enjoy too was Final Destination Bloodlines. That one to me was something I've been waiting to see for a while. I haven't checked out the Final Destination movie since I was little. So with Final Destination Bloodlines, it was a film that was very much fit my expectations. Didn't exceed, but I really did enjoy. Had a very good time with it. I will say though, I do want to give a very honorable mention here to K-pop Demon Hunters. This is probably the most unexpected surprise that I've had this year in terms of watching a movie. K-pop Demon Hunters was a movie I was refusing to watch at first when it came out just because I'm not the biggest fan of musicals. I mentioned before in my Wicked review that musicals don't really fit for me, especially if they get very annoyingly, not catchy, but very repetitive and kind of ruining the tension building of the story. Whereas with K-pop Demon Hunters, I do think they nailed the balance out very well. The songs are catchy; they're not annoying as much. Certain songs I do think do get a little bit in there, but it doesn't happen as often as other musical movies that have done that before. And I would say with this one, you do care about the characters, the plot itself. You do feel the tension with its story building. Now we got a freaking ad here from Netflix. I do not want to see this. But, anyways, though, K-pop Demon Hunters, I did really enjoy it. It was probably the biggest surprise. I didn't think I was going to really like this movie, but I did. So, yeah. Now, going into other categories that I wanted to put out for this year was some of my most disappointing movies that I saw. And right off the bat, one that does come to mind is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Originally, I did give it a 3.5 in my first viewing, but because of the way that I've thought about it ever since it came out, I haven't rewatched it since I saw it in theaters. But I do think that, excuse me, I do think that it felt like a very disappointing end to the story that they were trying to wrap up in terms of the scale and the scope. And I really thought they did a really good job of that in Dead Reckoning. And with Final Reckoning, I felt like they were going to continue that and have a satisfying conclusion. And I do think it still sort of delivers that, but it spends a lot of its time in flashbacks. It just really doesn't land well in terms of how it wanted to tell its story. I think the action sequences though are amazing. Nothing's changed with that. They delivered great action sequences, stuff that leaves you on the edge of your seat. But in terms of its story and its overall narrative of this movie, I do think it really does lack its own standing, and it does hurt its film. So I did like Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning, but it was probably one of my most disappointing movies of the year. And then we got another candidate for disappointing movies of the year, Roofman. So Roofman was a movie that I originally didn't really think at the start of the year I was going to see, but I saw a bunch of trailers while I was at the theater. And when I first saw the trailers of these movies, or this movie in particular, I really did think that this was going to be a film that kind of was marketed as a comedy, because that's really what the first trailer reminded me of. I knew that it was going to be based on an actual story about this guy. I forgot what his name was, but it was based on a true story about the guy that Channing Tatum plays. But I think heading into the movie, I was really expecting to kind of have a good time and just laugh about a couple of things. And that's what I got from the trailers, though. And I even watched the trailer after I saw the movie, and I'm like, this is the same kind of impression I got. I was expecting it to be a comedy. And Roofman is more of a sad movie. It's just you see Channing Tatum's character, and you care about what he's going to do. So whenever he makes those actions of robbing these places, it really is you hate to see that. You want his character to succeed, but as a result, he keeps putting himself in this terrible position where it's just sooner or later he's gonna get caught. So I do think it was still a good movie. I did like it. I don't know why it doesn't say I didn't like it, but I guess that's my first feeling. I do think, looking back at it, I did like it, but I do think overall it was a much different film than I was expecting. And I think because of that, it did wind up being disappointing for me. Alright, we're going to go ahead and make this short and sweet in terms of the shittiest movies of the year. These ones I do think take the cake in terms of how bad they actually were. So we're going to go ahead and highlight 5 that I did not really enjoy as much. Start off, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Terrible execution of its characters. Horrible treatment of its nostalgia characters. And essentially fans of the original probably felt like that they hated the direction that they went. Dangerous Animals, extremely boring. Didn't really like the story that much. It just really, I think the concept's cool, but I don't know, throughout the whole movie, I just felt nothing in terms of its story development and its characters. Then we're going to go with Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I've already mentioned this before in my review with Five Nights at Freddy's 2, my quick reaction. I'm not the biggest fan of how they decided to approach the story with Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It very much relies on you doing homework with its lore, and the homework is fine, but only if it's something that usually happens with movies in general, where it's the only homework you really need is the first movie. You don't need to do homework on all these other things. You don't need to watch 4 hours of lore and how like everything comes together and every single Easter egg of this movie. I just think that as someone who played the first 4 games, that's really I feel like all the homework I really need to do, not to just explore all the other lore that other people know. But hey, if you're someone who really did enjoy this movie, good for you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm just someone who was just not the biggest fan of what they did, and I didn't really enjoy it as much. Another movie that I absolutely did not like was Megan 2.0. I really do think that the way they decided to change Megan's character after the first movie is an interesting choice. Doesn't fit though. I don't think it works very well, and it's just such a cringy ass movie in my opinion. And then that's pretty much all for the movies that I do think are not that great. One of the days was the very first movie I saw in 2025, and that was kind of like a very slow start for me because in January there wasn't too many movies. Someone brought this up, decided to go watch it, and I just did not really like it. It just none of the comedy hit for me. I didn't really care too much about the characters. Some parts I did look back at and they're kind of funny, but I don't know. For me, it just rang very hollow. Other than that, though, that's all I have to say about 2025 and its movies. Crazy year. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys around soon.